Welcome to Frequency. I'm Jenni Field.
And I'm Gose.
Frequency is your go-to for real talk about comms, culture, and employee experience, beyond the buzzwords and straight to what matters. And what matters today, Chuck, is collywobbles, which is a word I haven't heard for a very long time. And I heard it on a TV show the other day. And I wondered if it was a word that you knew, because it's one that I know, but I just haven't heard for a very long time.
I've now known this word for about 5 seconds.
It's not something that ever comes up in...
It does not. There's a few words that do come up every now and then that I've heard or referenced, and I will admittedly Google to make sure that I know what they are. But I will say, if you have not heard of it for a while, then I guarantee you it is new to my vernacular.
Okay, so I know it. So I was watching the latest Ewan McGregor and Charlie, whose last name now escapes me, show where they take their motorbikes and travel. I don't know whether you've even seen these, but they do like the long way road or the long way up, and they travel through different parts of the world on a motorbike for a few months. And they're at this really high bit, and Charlie said, "Oh, it's giving me the collywobbles." And that's what made me go, "Oh, I haven't heard this for ages." But I looked up what it was. So it's an informal British term for a nervous feeling in the stomach, often associated with nervousness or a slight fear. So that's what it means.
Also, like butterflies.
Yeah, more of a fear perspective, like when you're stood at the edge of a high thing, or it's giving me the collywobbles. So there we go. I've shared some knowledge.
Fascinating.
And then the other thing that was on my mind this week, all the weird things, are escalators, which are not, they're not called escalators over there.
Well, we have escalators.
So they are called escalators. Okay. And my question to you is, do you walk up and down them, or do you just stand?
Oh, so there's actually some history to this as well.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why I know this. They were originally designed in the sense of moving stairs, meaning you would walk on them as it's going up, not just stand there. Yes, if I'm not carrying anything. But a lot of times when I encounter escalators, I've got luggage or something like that, and I am absolutely not walking with luggage on moving stairs.
Fair. I suppose because I'm often on them on the London Underground with just like a backpack on. So I would be marching up and down. I was just interested because there's quite a bit of chat from a kind of health and wellness perspective around if you're able to walking, because it's like the 1% of the population that do it, which I just thought was fascinating. So,
I learned in one of very early on trips to London about the etiquette of the escalators in the London Underground, which is, if you're not moving, if you're not walking up the stairs, you go to the right and you stay to the right and you line up single file so that the people who are walking up the escalators have a clear path, or else you will get run over / dirty look / pushed out of the way. So I did learn, and I still do that today, even now, like again on escalator, I still like put my luggage like right in front of me and stay to the right because it's just ingrained. But also on a recent flight, I saw an interesting situation, which I hadn't really thought about, of a mom traveling with a toddler who apparently had never encountered an escalator before and was terrified of them. And you think about what the imagery of it, I can see why this is a new experience. I never thought in a million years, Jenni, on this podcast, we'd be talking about escalators.
Wow, there you go. I'm bringing all the high level conversation today.
But I compare it to the moving, like when you think about airports and escalators, the moving walkways. Like there are people that stand, and there are people that are me that treat every day in life like a race, who are trying to like fly by them.
Yeah, I imagine you are. Yeah, that you're a racer, I can tell.
Yeah.
And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was, as my event's finished, you have an event coming up, which I know about as an Icology member, which is the Flyover Festival in Sioux Falls in August. And it's your in-person event. I think it's your annual event. So just tell us more.
I love sharing this story because it came from our membership. where we have this great group of members who are from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And for a lot of people listening, that even people in the US may not know where Sioux Falls is on the map. And that's part of their frustration, is that they're like, we always have to go somewhere else. No one ever comes here. So we're like, you know what? We'll come there. So it's our third annual, we call it the Employee Comms and Culture Flyover Festival. It's a one-day event. It's a great day, high energy, fun event. And it's your chance to go to Sioux Falls, because guess what? You don't have to convince your boss that you're doing anything else. Vegas, San Francisco, Miami. I hope you do extend a trip or extend a day to explore Sioux Falls. But if not, it's a pretty easy sell. And we made it very affordable for people to come. So you can go to joinicology.com, check out Flyover Festival, and join us on August 26th. A really fun day to connect with other internal communicators, likely in a city you've never been to before.
I love that. We'll pop a link in the show notes to that so people can check it out and get tickets as well. So what are the articles we are talking about this week?
Yes, this week, Jenny, we've got a lineup of stories that covers what we hide, how we feel, whether AI is helping or hurting, and yes, whether your sneakers are too casual for that next big company meeting. But we're going to kick things off with something deeply human and what we're not saying at work and what it's costing us. So a new HiBob report finds that nearly all of us, 97%, pretty close to all of us, are hiding parts of who we are just to fit in. And the big question is, at what price are we doing this? So this new report from HiBob peels back the professional mask many employees wear every day, and the numbers are staggering. They surveyed 2,000 US workers and found this 97% admit to covering, which is a new term for me. I'd not heard that term before, which means it's hiding aspects of who you are, at least some of the time to fit in the work. 40% say they cover often or always about who they are. So what's being hidden ranges from age, mental health, cultural background, even everyday caregiving responsibilities. So why do many people feel they can't bring their whole selves to work? Well, the top reasons are clear. Most employees cover to maintain a, quote, professional image. That's more than half. To boost their chances at a promotion or raise, and to avoid discrimination or social backlash. This means a huge portion of today's workforce is spending energy managing impressions instead of doing their best work. This constant self-censorship comes at a cost. More than half of respondents say they're more stressed because of it. And many believe they'd be more productive, innovative, and happier if they didn't feel this pressure to hide. The data point paints a clear picture. Company cultures, especially highly competitive ones, still reward conformity over authenticity, and it's quietly draining trust, creativity, and well-being from the workforce. Jenny, reading this makes me wonder, if so many people feel they have to hide parts of themselves to get ahead, do we need to redefine what professional, quote unquote, really means? How can communicators help build cultures where people feel safe to drop the mask?
I find this research so interesting because I really want to get into the specifics of things that people are hiding, because there's something about like hiding, or their term of covering, that makes it feel so intentional. And I think that's the thing that's uncomfortable about this, is it's not like I'm just not sharing that for my own privacy or my own, protection or whatever it might be. Like, I'm intentionally not sharing it because it's going to have a detrimental impact on me if I do. And it's the professional image bit. And you're right. I think we do have to redefine what that means. And as we were going through this sort of professional image, in quote marks, we've got the air quotes back out for this episode, um, got me thinking about my own career and what I thought was a professional image. And I am someone, this is so random, right? So I'm someone that has naturally very curly hair. And over the years, I have straightened that. And because for me, curly hair is not a professional image. So I've always sort of straightened it. And there's various times where it kind of goes back and stuff. But from the moment I probably started work, it had to be straight because it wasn't professional to have it that way. And I think that pressure of what professional image looks like is really hard. And I think part of that is because people don't know what to do with the bigger stuff, right? Me having curly hair is kind of irrelevant, but it's that professional image piece that I'm looking at. And I think if someone says, mental health or I've got caregiving, I think a lot of people don't know how to respond to that. And therefore, that's why people don't say anything, because they're met with either a blank look or unequipped people to be able to deal with that or support that, because we still don't know naturally and normally how to do that. But I do think there is what is a professional image in modern society. And it makes me so uncomfortable that 97% are admitting to it. Like, that number is staggering, that people are hiding bits of who they are because they think it's going to, not give them a chance of getting a promotion, or they're going to get some sort of social backlash. And that's all, they're all around that 50% mark, those reasons. So that's the bit that makes me really sad. And I don't know the way forward, but I definitely think the professional image piece needs to be looked at. And I wonder if at the moment we're somewhere in a messy patch of that, where we've got some people swinging really the other way and some people clinging on to this sort of corporate professional image, and maybe it'll balance out in a few years' time.
Whether it's curly hair for you or it's someone hiding tattoos, I know
Yeah.
that has been a thing at times
Yeah.
over the years. But again, I think that's an area that's being relaxed. I think about it more that this is not about people, I think it's a fallacy at times when say like, oh, bring your whole self to work. No, you don't actually have to.
No, you
But
don't.
when you're hiding things, what does that say about your team, the company? Maybe I don't want to put this back on the person from an insecurity standpoint. Maybe there's a little bit of that too, coupled with pressures that are there. I mean, I've heard stories, I can't attribute it to an example, where people have hid that they had children because they thought that might hold them back from opportunities. Like, that's the type of stuff that is like, wow, like
Yeah.
we are somewhat silently judging people, or they feel like they're being judged for sharing certain things. It was just this term covering. When I first saw the report, I was like, that's a new term for me. I had not heard that before. So I applaud Hi Bob for bringing some of this data forward
Mm.
and sharing this with us. We'll have a link as we do to all the stories, and you can download the full research. But I think it's a really good self-reflection time of looking at our own behaviors. And maybe that's for very valid reasons
Yeah.
that you do.
Yeah. And I think before we move on, just that reflection piece, I think sometimes we create a story. And I'm not saying this is happening, but sometimes we create a story about what would happen if I shared this, or what would happen if I mentioned that. And we create the negative response to that, which is very natural for us as human beings, because we will look at the threat more than anything else. So I think if you're feeling like you are covering something, then just check in on your own story that you're telling yourself around whether or not you need to, and where that's coming from. And I think that's just a helpful check, because sometimes there are going to be environments where it's just really unpleasant, and I get that. But I think sometimes we create stories and reasons. It comes up a lot with people I coach. Like, where's the story coming from this, or where's the proof point for that belief? Like, or is it just that we've created it to protect ourselves? So just always check in on that with anything that's going on in your head.
Let's move along. As I thought about this next story, the REM's song Shiny Happy People was kind of playing in my head. So if that helps some of you know that song, you can sing that to yourself as we talk about that. Axios highlighted fresh research that turns a bit of an old assumption on its head, where happy employees don't just feel good, but they're good for the bottom line too. The study, published in the National Bureau of Economic Research, finds that companies with rising employee sentiment significantly outperform on the stock market. Firms in the top third for employee happiness see stock returns about 5% higher per year than their peers, even after controlling for industry size and profitability. Meanwhile, companies where workers are disengaged or undervalued can expect to pay for it with lower returns and weaker performance over time. This isn't just nice to have HR fluff anymore. Investors are paying closer attention to Glassdoor scores and other culture signals as early predictors of future growth or trouble. Basically, if you're ignoring employee experience, the market may not be ignoring it. So, Jenni, the data makes it pretty clear that employee sentiment is a driver of financial performance, but what I keep coming back to is, if the link is so strong, do leaders actually care enough to act on it? Or are they still comfortable pretending culture is someone else's job while the business is ultimately paying the hidden cost?
So I take a bit of an issue with this research because happiness is not the responsibility of the employer. It is the responsibility of the individual, because to make an employer responsible for someone's happiness is just impossible, right? Happiness is something that we control ourselves. It's not something that somebody else is linked to. So I feel like their use of the word happiness is unfortunate for me in this report, because when we talk about things like employee sentiment, or we talk about like the Glassdoor scores and the culture, I'm there for all of that. But I think the reason why people will ignore it is because you're using words like employee happiness, and that is just unquantifiable and not possible to control. Whereas if you're saying that employees who are having a great experience see stock returns of 5%, then yes, that's something I can, as a leader, explore, control, influence. But if it's happiness, that's too broad and too big, and that's not my responsibility. So I feel like it's an unfortunate term for me. Um, and I think that's why people switch off, because it doesn't feel like something that is something I can do anything about. So I think that's where sometimes it's ignored, because it's not articulated in a way that makes sense for leaders and anyone in an organization in a management and leadership position to be able to really look at and go, right, how are we going to talk about this in the world of business? If we're just talking about how do we make people happier at work, I mean, come on, like, is that really a conversation we're going to have at the boardroom level? Because this that's just massive. Whereas if we have a conversation that says we need to make sure that our employee experience is brilliant, that it's aligned to our values, that it's contributing to what we say on the outside and what we're doing on the inside, like, it needs to cover all of these things. I want to review that it's doing that, because I can see the results of 5%. I want to get that. So I want to be able to see what we're doing now and how we could improve it. That's a very different, specific conversation to how do we make people happier?
I think now they are probably regretting it too, using that word choice, if they just listen to you shred the research. I'm wondering if it's more around, like, are you creating an environment where employees actually can be happy? Like, there are companies that are creating environments where that's not even a breeding ground for it. Like, that's not. And I wonder too, if the oversimplification is intended not to spark conversation, but to get people just simply thinking like, oh,
Right.
okay, happy employees, we're going to do better. I would think, whether it's the company's responsibility or leader's responsibility or not, general human nature, I would think you would like for your employees
Yeah.
to be happy. So what can we do to do that? And if companies start taking actions around what can we do to breed that, and then, oh, by the way, we're doing that, whether it's not just because you should want employees to be happier, not that you own their happiness, but this will pay off for us in the long run. A lot of times leaders, yeah, happy employees, maybe leaders don't care. Like, oh, happy employees and our stock is better. Oh, okay. What can we do? What are we doing to make them
Yeah.
unhappy? I agree. It's a gross oversimplification of it.
Yeah, and I think there's a risk there, right? If you went out to employees and said, "How can we make you happier at work?" and everyone comes back and says, 7,000 days off a year and the ability to work wherever I want and all these things, then we're setting ourselves up for failure, and it's not going to align to the organizational goals. So I think it's just, for me, sometimes in some of the work around employee experience and internal comms, we use language that isn't helpful when we're trying to engage business leaders and organizational leaders. And this is an example for me where this is such an opportunity to really talk about the business impact, the organizational impacts of good employee experience and good communication and good culture. And it's just going to sort of, I'm going to use the phrase poo hard out the room, but I don't even know where that phrase comes from.
So we
Yeah.
have down tools, and now
I'm going
is
to have
that
to look it
poo?
up so that I can
Okay.
figure out what it actually is.
All right. Let's move along to a new report from Section that exposes a big disconnect in the AI boom, that while budgets and buzz keep growing, most companies are barely scratching the surface of real impact. They surveyed over 5,000 knowledge workers, and the report found the average AI proficiency score sits at just 39 out of 100. Go to the research to learn what that means. And while 54% believe they're good at using AI, only 1% are truly experts. Not surprisingly, that tiny slice is mostly made up of C-suite executives. And I'm curious if that's where they are just calling themselves experts or not. Meanwhile, the majority of employees stick to the basics, using AI as an assistant or creator, but only 40% tap it as a thought partner where deeper productivity gains usually happen. So it's no surprise that most people save less than 2 hours per week with AI, falling short of the big promises of reclaiming entire workdays. One kicker here is that the people who could benefit most, frontline employees and individual contributors, are half as likely as executives to get paid access to advanced AI tools like LLMs. Section calls this hollow progress. I like that term. On paper, companies look innovative, but in practice, they're mostly just reinforcing old divides, while the same people getting the best tech and training, while everyone else is left to figure it out alone. So, Jenni, my question to you is, if people feel underprepared and under-resourced, it's no wonder they don't trust AI, which we've talked about in past episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Should we as communicators focus more on building skills first to earn that trust before selling the benefits of AI?
I think it's probably a bit of a mix, because there's some interesting data in here about people aren't using it for that sort of thought partner piece and that deeper productivity and some of that stuff. And that got me thinking about people I know that are using it. And I have conversations about AI a lot. We have conversations away from here where we're chatting about using it. It does lie, right? So as much as we're saying people should be using it more and doing stuff, like, it does make stuff up. And I think if you have an experience with it where it's not doing what you need it to do, then you're going to disconnect from it. So I don't know whether it's skills or benefits first. This feels like a bit of a chicken and egg conversation. But if I think of a specific example of a friend I was having breakfast with a couple of weeks ago, and he's a researcher, does sort of history and research of luxury hotels and things. Fascinating. And he was trying to sort of verify something. So he asked ChatGPT if this could be verified. And it said, yes, it's actually in this book on this page and this chapter, and this is what it says. Now, we could take that at face value, but being a researcher, he went to a library, got the book out, and it just wasn't there. Like, it was entirely made up. Whereas I would expect that to be real, but so his experience is very much like, I'm not interested now because it's not helpful. So I think I can't sell him the benefit. I can sell him some benefits, but the trust is broken. And I think if we come back to what we talked about on the previous episode about that cultural intelligence of that relationship with AI, and that trust piece is not dissimilar to that human relationship and trust. And then you've got to rebuild trust with a machine, right? Which is really hard. So I think there's more to it around your own individual experience. But if people feel they don't know how to use it and don't understand it, then I think you've got to start with the trust building element of it and how it can help you, and maybe then do the skills. Maybe that's the way around. So maybe we should be benefits and then skills. It's kind of where I think I'm landing.
I think that comes down to, when it comes to AI, people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Exactly.
and they don't know how to use it. I will push back a little bit that it's wrong sometimes and that it lies sometimes, because so do people.
Well, yes,
Peop-
I'm not.
People
Yeah,
are
that's fair.
like, people are also wrong, and people
Yes.
also lie.
Yes.
And I'm not
Yeah.
saying AI is people, and this isn't Soylent Green, but I think it's just good for us to know and remind ourselves that there is a gap. There are people that are enthusiasts. There are people that aren't comfortable, actually to the point of being uncomfortable using it. Or honestly, I think a lot of times just don't think to
Yeah.
use it. They're so set in their ways, not in a bad way, but this is how I do things. And it's actually would it have them change that process, which we know takes a lot of time and a lot of thought to change a habit or change a process. And I guess the thing around, AI proficiency sits, they say, at just 39 out of 100. I don't know. Is that good though? Is that what's other proficiency scores that are out there? Like
Yeah.
what's other software, other process systems that, I mean, if you're asked my proficiency on Salesforce or my proficiency on
Yeah.
Excel or other things, but I think if people are growing skills, let's not penalize them for it. I'm interested in this 1% experts, because some people do like to call themselves an expert. I like to use the word enthusiast. I would not call myself an AI expert at all, but someone else might. I like to use the word enthusiast because I'm curious. I actually want to see what it can do or can't do. But to your researcher's story, you still need to verify stuff. No
Yeah.
different than if a person gave you information. You can run with it, or you can take the time to
Yeah.
verify it.
Yeah, I think that is fair. And I actually, in the conversation we had over breakfast, he was asking me, how do I use it? And I was sharing that. And he was saying, oh, I hadn't really thought about using it in that way for other stuff. So to your point of you don't know what you don't know, I think it's like any new technology platform, whatever, you need the knowledge about those benefits and what it can do to then know what are the skills you need to learn. Because as we've talked about before, AI is vast. Like there's so many different elements to it that you kind of need to figure out where you need to where it's going to be useful and those benefits, and then learn those skills. Otherwise, we're learning how to use a hammer when actually what we need is a spanner, and that isn't useful if you just go straight in skills.
Yeah, I think it's actually at times pausing and thinking, can a tool help me use this? So I'll give an example. On a recent trip that I came back, I had a bunch of receipts from hotels, restaurants, Ubers, taxis, whatever. And I was actually curious, like, where the breakdown of spending was, but I didn't want to go through and actually enter everything in and do the calculations. I actually did a test and uploaded it to ChatGPT to say, hey, this is receipts from a recent trip. Can you help me categorize and give me totals based on this? It came back with numbers that I was like, oh, okay, that's good information. I didn't go back and verify it because I didn't need to. I
Yeah.
was just more like, I was looking for estimations on this information. I could have gone and done it myself, and it would have taken me, I don't know how long, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. ChatGPT did it in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm happy with the 30-second answer because I
Yeah.
was just looking for like a ballpark number.
Yeah. And I think when you're feeding in the data, when you're uploading, so like the receipts or a report or something, then it's using that source based on your prompt to
Yes.
to do that. So there's less verification, I think, needed there than when you're just going, oh, what about this? And that's different. So yeah, great
There
use.
have been times where I've noticed like information I've given it and it just comes back with a different date.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, you're just like a human. You didn't read it either.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move along to another AI story, but a little more applicable to day-to-day life. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy, who we've talked about in previous episodes, just put AI front and center for the company's 1.5 million employees, declaring that AI fluency is no longer optional. I thought this was a great segue from our section report from earlier. In his annual shareholder letter and an internal memo, Jassy laid out plans to upskill hundreds of thousands of Amazon workers in generative AI, from HQ engineers to warehouse teams, to make sure that everyone is ready for an AI-powered future. This move from Amazon signals that AI skills are shifting from a nice-to-have to a non-negotiable at a pretty large scale. But here's where it ties back to what we talked about in the section report. Despite all the hype and investment, and only 1% are truly experts, this is why it's critical that frontline and individual contributor level employees are getting the latest training and access. So while Amazon's promise to upskill the whole workforce sounds bold, it raises a question: can companies close the proficiency gap fast enough, or will employees feel overwhelmed and left behind yet again? To me, Amazon's memo feels like a bit of a real world test of the section report's warning, where we talk big about AI, but most people still don't know how to use it well. Jenni, how can communicators keep trust and confidence high when companies are pushing mandatory upskilling on employees who may already feel unprepared and anxious about
Mm.
AI in general?
And this reminds me again of that conversation last week in the CQ report of the people that feel at different ends of the spectrum. So the people who are real enthusiasts, and also then the people that just want to reject it. So this is a huge piece of what like this is a huge piece of work for Amazon around upskilling an entire workforce. But it's also a big change program, right? This is gonna be the same, process that you would go through on change of people who don't want to use a different system for something else, or they don't want to relocate offices, or they don't wanna do that, and other people who feel really excited about that because it's better. Like, it's it's the same human emotion and conflict about change that we see in lots of other parts of the workplace. So, I think I applaud the fact that they are investing in the upskill, but at the moment it's like a promise. So what does that really look like? What does that really mean? And I think until we see that, it's really hard to see what this is actually going to do. Um, but I do think it's easy to get swept up in the AI fanfare, when actually this is a change program
Mhm.
of any other change program we would be doing, where people will feel all the feels that you feel when you're going through change.
You say fanfare. I prefer the word hoopla, like
Okay,
AI
nice.
hoopla. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I can get on board with that.
The what was interesting also in the memo, so for the people that is saying like, oh, AI is not really coming for your job, he cited that the company's use of artificial intelligence will reduce their total corporate workforce. So he's basically calling it out, saying that it is. There were some internal Slack messages that were shared that, one person said the focus on cost cutting over customer satisfaction would be dangerous and have
Mhm.
consequences. And Amazon takes a very customer first approach. And another one called Jassie's remarks, the antithesis of think big, which is one of their principles. And Amazon's already been cutting jobs. So if this is going to
Mm.
accelerate that, it's sort of like upskill. If you work there, it's like upskill and learn it, or you're going to be, I would think, at a pretty big risk.
But for me, this also links back to, I think it was one of the conversations we had on a previous episode. I think it might have been my freak out, or I might have talked about it in the articles, but it was about this sort of construct of work and how that needs to change with the use of technology in the last 100 years, and how work has remained the same construct of pretty much 4 days on, 2 days off, in parts of the world, and how we change that. And technology should have done that already, in my opinion, but now it's definitely going to do it. The catalyst of the pandemic and then AI, the way we work is going to be different. That doesn't make it any nicer when you're being told that this is going to reduce our total
Mhm.
corporate workforce. But I'm still interested in, is it going to reduce it? Is it going to reduce it in the short term, and then other roles are gonna come up in the longer term, which mean it kinda comes back up because there's other roles that need to be fulfilled because the technology is now doing something else. So I don't know. I think there's possibly some short-term pain for some long-term gain, but I think all of the stuff we talk about on AI on this podcast seems to signal to me that there's not that many people that are using it, that like all the data reports that we look at are saying it's maybe 20%, 40%. Like, it's not anywhere near half or over half on a regular basis. So I'm really interested to see what does this really look like? What does upskilling look like? And how long is that going to take? Because there's just a lot of variables in there.
I wonder by the nature of the employee who works at Amazon if that percentages are just a little bit higher of people using it versus just employers at large. We're going to wrap this up. I want to wrap it up with a bit of a lighter type story, but I think one that I'm glad we're talking about, but has also always been a little frustrating for me. Washington Post dropped a meticulously curated guide featuring 39 definitive rules to redefine, air quote, business casual in today's post-pandemic world. With forever options like elastic waist slacks and clean sneakers to tailored suits and natural fibers, the guide aims to help employees balance comfort, professionalism, and personal style, Jenni. Key takeaways. include elastic waist pants and clean minimalist sneakers can be acceptable, but Crocs, slides, and emoji stuffed tees are an immediate no-go. Clothing should be neither too tight or too loose, with natural fiber fabrics preferred, and wrinkle-free or well-steamed. And there is room for individuality, but only if you follow the quote-unquote not too rule. Not too short, not too revealing, not too sloppy. The guide encouraged employees to ask HR or hiring managers for clarity on dress codes, especially helpful for new hires or returning post-pandemic, to avoid confusion when business casual becomes too vague. Dress codes send a clear cultural signal, Jenni, but honestly, who has time to police this stuff? If someone's sneakers are too casual, should leaders and communicators focus less on micromanaging appearance and more on what actually builds trust and belonging? Or is this actually important at work?
So I think it is important at work. So I
Go
think that
on.
so she says it with trepidation. So I think that the fact that we make snap decisions on somebody within like the first 3-4 seconds means that how we show up is important. Um, I think that has to be linked to you and who you are and how you want to show up. I don't think people should have to conform to, a suit and tie necessarily if that's not their preferred style. But I do think there are social norms that exist in various different industries and cultures that would be expected to be followed in those environments. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But I do think there is a balance in how we deal with it. Like I'm not a fan of Crocs, so I'm kind of all for the no Croc thing. Um, but I also can reflect on walking into my CEO's office at some point in my career, and I was in sort of cut off trousers and sort of some sort of flat pump things. They weren't trainers, but like ballet shoes, I suppose, and a sort of striped shirt thing. And my CEO looked me up and down and said, "Are you going camping?" And I was like, "No, and can you look at this press release?" And so this isn't new. Like the conversation about dress, I don't think is necessarily new, but I do think that there is a lot to be said for putting on an outfit for an occasion and how that makes you feel and your confidence and all of that. And I am someone who has invested in a stylist over the years. She's fantastic, Lisa. And I've worked with her for a long time because I got stuck in what to wear as a consultant. So I was about a year into my consultancy business and I would conform to the culture of the organizations I was going into. So if I was working with an agency, I'd be in jeans and a blazer. If I was in a FTSE or yeah, FTSE 200 or 100, I'd be in a smart dress and heels. And I was just sort of a chameleon and being different everywhere. So working with her helped me find my style. So I know how to show up in a way where I feel comfortable and confident. I'm not worried about that. And and I'm okay there because I found that middle ground for me. So I do think it's important. And I've heard people talking about wearing things. I used to do this. If I was going into the board meeting, I'd wear blue because it's quite a calming and influential color rather than bold colors like a red, which can be quite angry. Like I would think about stuff like that. And I don't think that's always a bad thing.
Yeah, I wanted to intentionally bookend our conversation with this, going back to the covering conversation to kick it off, because I think this
Uh-huh.
is an element. This is an element of that. And I've always viewed, I think having guidance for employees is helpful because maybe some don't know expectations. I think dress codes
Agreed.
is the
Yes.
problem. I
I
think
agree.
I've
Agree.
always, right or wrong, compared dress codes to going to church/religion.
Okay.
Some people need it. Some people need the rules. Some people just know what it means to be a good person. And I think dress is very much the same way. Some people, they actually do need to be told, wear this, don't wear this, wear this, don't wear this. Other people are like, yeah, I'm going to be me. I'm never going to look out of place, but I'm not going to conform to like that covering part. To this day, anybody that asks me, like, what is the number one piece of advice that you've ever learned in business? And it was at my very first job when I had my first 3-month review, and they reviewed all the work, and my boss had all these glowing things to say. And she's like, but I do have one piece of feedback for you. And I was like, great. I was 22 years old, fresh out of college. And she was like, you've really got to learn how to use an iron. Like and I was still in this college mindset of like, I still had a button down and
Yeah.
pants on, I mean, all that stuff. But she's like, you've really got to learn how to use an iron. To this day, I am the ironer in our house. I am the ironer in hotel rooms. I steam I've got it down. I've got it down pat because of that piece of ice. Because how you show up does matter, but I think it's the materials and the this or the that, and
Yeah.
that's where it gets to be a bit much. Because also, back to my question around who has time to actually police this stuff.
I'm with you. I think dress codes are not okay. The natural fiber thing for me was odd when you were reading that out. I was like, what a weird thing to say. But I like the not too rule, like not too short, not too revealing.
That's the guidance.
Yeah, I like that. Like that is, when we were growing up, as a young woman, you never showed too much cleavage and too much leg at the same time. It was always one or the other. And I think, it's guidance. It's helpful for us all as we navigate life.
Good. So that wraps up our collection of items this week, Jenni. What is your freak out?
So my freak out this week is voting systems on online Q&A platforms at events, because it's event season. So I've been at lots of them, both for clients and industry. And I think Slido is the most popular one, where people can submit questions and then people can vote them. And I think that's a really great system, right? If you're going to listen to the voting, because
I was waiting for the butt part.
It was coming, right? So if there's a question that's voted to the top, you need to ask that question whether you like it or not. And I've been now to a few events where that question has been ignored, and because it's uncomfortable. And for me, that is an ethical line. Like, I think that is not okay, because what's the point then? Because that's going to break trust. So if you're using these systems and you're having the voting, then please use them and ask them. And even if you don't have answers, that's okay. But if you're not prepared to do that, then just don't use them.
Very good. I agree. My freak out this week, Jenni, is 4 simple words. And then I'm going to let you decide if you want me to go deeper into the freak out. The 4 words are methane-powered sea spiders.
Say more.
Okay. This is my freak out. We are destroying the planet so much that greenhouse gases, and maybe others know this, and I just learned this. Greenhouse gases are in the ocean waters. There are now sea spiders that are feeding on the methane in the ocean, and this is now like their fuel. This is something straight out of some B science fiction level type thing that is now real life, that there are methane powered sea spiders. And as we talk about verifying things, I then Googled these things, and there are multiple news sources all citing that methane powered sea spiders exist, and we did this to ourselves.
Okay. I have some follow-up questions. We're not going to spend ages on this because that's not the point of this podcast. I have quite a fear of spiders, so I'm not going to go and research this. But it's the use of powered, like, so is it like, I've got visions of like massive spiders powering around and then becoming like mutant spiders that are going to come out and get us.
Who knows?
Oh my God. Okay. I'm not going to look it up because I can't. It'll freak me out. So thank you.
Now you know that was my freak out. And with that, thank you all for joining us this week. All of the articles, including the link to the methane-powered sea spiders that have inspired this conversation, are in the show notes, so do not forget to rate and review after you've listened. Subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and pass this along to someone you think would enjoy listening or watching, because you can now find Frequency on YouTube. Thank you to Poet Ali for contributing the music to the show. We will be back next week with more news, insights, and opinions about everything comms and leadership in workplaces today. Keep tuning in and turning up.